Now we've reached the point in these history videos where we're covering stuff that I was directly involved in. So pardon me if I make this kind of first person. I told Bill Clinton that he would lose the House and the Senate in the election of 1994, and he dismissed my prediction as crazy, and he lost the House and the Senate, and the next thing I knew, on election night, he was giving the statement that I'd written for him in the odd case that that might have happened. After he lost the election, Hillary called me and asked me to come to the White House and meet with her and Bill. And I did, and they essentially asked me to come back and kind of take things over. The way Hillary phrased it is, do for us what you did in 1981 and 82. Back in 1980, Bill had lost the governorship in Arkansas. It was a 2-year term back then, and had fired me before he lost it. Another consultant lost the race. And they called me back, and I came in, and I sort of took things over and got him elected in 1982, and he was on his way. And Hillary, it was kind of cute, Hillary said, do for us what you did in 81. And Bill said, yes, save us. And I said, you know, I have to keep saving you guys. And Hillary said, last time, I swear. Well, it turned out not to be the last time. There was Lewinsky to come. But that was really when I developed the mandate to run Bill Clinton's re-election campaign for the '96 election. Now, the first thing I did was that I took a poll to analyze what was holding Bill down, what were the reasons that he was having political trouble. And what I found was that a certain portion of the electorate regarded him as immoral because of Jennifer Flowers and the draft and Whitewater and a whole series of things like that. And that was kind of incurable. But a third of the voters didn't think he was immoral, they just thought he was weak. They thought that he wasn't really somebody who would stand firm, that he was kind of a cream puff or a weather vane that would go whichever way the wind was blowing. And one of the big reasons for that was Hillary. People thought that the marriage was essentially a zero-sum game. The stronger Bill was, the weaker Hillary was. The stronger Hillary was, the weaker Bill was. They didn't understand that in a modern marriage, very often, the two people together are stronger than the sum of the parts, like Eileen and mine. And as a result, I advised Hillary to withdraw from active involvement in the White House, in the West Wing. Don't go to the strategy meetings. Don't exercise visible power. If you want to do things, do it through your husband. Don't do it directly. No more health care reform. No more firing the people in the travel office. Because I said the more you're seen as powerful, the weaker Bill is seen. And she agreed to that. She withdrew and did a whole series of sort of East Wing activities, hosting dinners and stuff like that. But then on a substantive level, she began on her book, It Takes a Village, and about education, and she began her focus on children and education issues very effectively, culminating in going to China and saying that right to choose meant no forced abortions, which was a very courageous and important thing for her to say, and stands in sharp contrast with Michelle Obama's fluffy trip to China where she didn't do anything. Meantime, back with Bill. The key concern was that the Republicans had made these major budget cuts through what they called the Contract with America, led by Gingrich. And they wanted to dismantle a wide range of government programs and spending, in particular, curbing Medicare, Medicaid, education, and the environment. And I polled all of these cuts, and I found that those four were the cuts people disliked the most. But the problem was that while the press wanted to set this up as a game of Bill saying, don't cut, and the Republicans saying, cut, where the Democrats would say, don't cut, and the Republicans would say, cut, the traditional game in Washington, we didn't want to do that because Bill Clinton, unlike most of the Democrats, favored a balanced budget and was determined to reach it. Most of the Democrats gave that lip service, but they didn't care about the deficit. They just wanted to continue government spending. So our problem became, how do we convince the media that we want a balanced budget, just as much as the Republicans do, but we want to get to it in our own way. And we want to get to it by taking maybe a few years longer and not cutting Medicare, Medicaid, education, and the environment, but cutting the hell out of the rest of the bureaucracy, which was really what the Democrats wanted to defend. They said they were trying to defend these important programs, but in fact they were trying to defend the staff of the Department of Transportation or the Attorney General's office or the Post Office or Amtrak or all of this other stuff that really could be cut to balance the budget. I had a deadly fight with the others in the administration who strongly opposed these cuts. Now, at first, my involvement with Bill was secret. I was codenamed Charlie. He wanted it that way because he didn't know if I would work out, and I was a Republican when he hired me. And I wanted it that way because I'd lose all my Republican clients if it came out, and I didn't know if I would be able to stay on top of that bronco in Washington and do the campaign. So, but in April, my involvement became public, as deliberately Clinton wanted it out there. And I was locked in a death struggle in April, May, and June with Leon Panetta, George Stephanopoulos, and Harold Ickes versus me on the issue of whether to balance the budget or not. And Al Gore came out decisively in favor of my point of view and was very helpful. And I said, you can't oppose these cuts without prescribing an alternate way to balance the budget. People will say, I don't want these cuts, but I'll take these cuts if the alternative is a deficit that's going to strangle the country. And I said, the only way you can persuade people to oppose the cuts is to say there's an alternate path for the balanced budget. I called that the third way. And I called that triangulation, which became a name affiliated with me, that you take the best from the Republicans, the best from the Democrats, and you create a third way, a new method of balancing the budget without compromising those fundamental programs. There was a bitter fight, and there was a meeting in June. I would have weekly strategy meetings with the president, attended by most of his senior staff, which was essentially a conversation between the president and me, with Gore talking a lot and Panetta talking, and then ultimately policy would emerge from it. And I had a real debate with Panetta and Ickes and Stephanopoulos over the balanced budget speech. Erskine Bowles, who was deputy chief of staff, was also very much on my side. And Clinton ruled. He said, I'm going to do that. And I remember he went to Panetta and he said, Leon, I've got to throw long, because he was way behind in the polls. And the decision was made, and at the end of June, the president gave a 5-minute national address urging a balanced budget and providing another pathway to it. As a symptom of how courageous that was, his proposal for a balanced budget was rejected by the United States Senate 99-0. Every Democrat and every Republican voted against it. The only guy in town who was for it was Bill Clinton. We'll pick up this story next week. Thanks.